So, welcome everybody. Today's workshop is all about what I actually do to you guys, which I think should be of some interest since I'm doing it to you. If you want to know, what it is that we're actually doing and where it came from and the history of it. It didn't come from nowhere. In 2010, 2008, I started my pediatric training. And that was a very intensive pediatric training. I had to go down to the city a couple of times a month for weekends for 2 years. And it was the greatest thing I ever did. But at that point, I realized that I had to learn more cranial work, learn more about how the skull works. Because we got some introductory stuff, we learned some basic stuff. And I went to my first SOT seminar called Sacro-Occipatal seminar. So it must have been about 2010. And since then, that's what I've been doing, the Sacro-Occipatal technique. And I've been so happy. I've been a chiropractor for 35 years. So that's actually only like a third of my time being a chiropractor. Sometimes I really wish I had started it way back then. There's all these guys my age who were just like incredible masters. They're just like what they know is unbelievable. So sacro-occipital technique stands for, SOT stands for sacro-occipital technique. And it has to do with the relationship, not just with the sacrum, which is this bone here, and the occiput. And actually the important thing about that, and we're going to get more into it, is that there's a pumping mechanism that the sacrum and occiput do to create the flow of cerebral spinal fluid. Very, very important for our health. We'll get more into that. But it really looks at the relationship of all different parts of the body. So what's wonderful as a chiropractor is somebody could be coming in with headaches or neck pain, and I might realize that the underlying cause is actually down here somewhere. And really looking at how the whole body works together. And I think that's what really kind of sets chiropractic apart from allopathy, regular medicine. You go to a medical doctor or a physical therapist, your neck hurts, and they just look at your neck. They don't look at the relationship of the whole thing. So here, so it was created, sacro-occipital technique was created by Master Desjardins. His first name was actually Master. And they called him the Master. All right. And before he was a chiropractor, he was an engineer. Just like Brendan.
That's good.
All right. So he was an engineer, and he was in a terrible industrial accident. There was a huge explosion. He became severely injured. And he had a lot of troubles with his spine and his back and his whole body. And he ended up going to an osteopath who helped him a lot. So what did he decide to do? He went to osteopath school, became an osteopath. All right. Then he started seeing a chiropractor because the osteopathy was just helping him so much. And the chiropractic helped him even more. So he went to chiropractic school, became a chiropractor. That's the kind of guy this guy was. All right. So all the tenets of what we do in sacro-occipital technique is based on his background as an engineer and an osteopath, finally as a chiropractor. Isn't that interesting? All right. Now, this is something he said, that basically that the chiropractor got the biggest pop out of the neck was considered the best chiropractor. It's kind of like that in chiropractic school. You can really rack that neck and get a big pop. That was a good adjustment. Sometimes I still feel that way. But it's not about, that's not what it's about.
Mhm.
You know, it's that he's looked at this and said that there's a lot more to the human body than just moving. There's a lot more to the human body and chiropractic. So this is just amazing here. So this was a long time ago. All this. He started in 1924. In 1936, he was using a black light analyzer, analyzing study of blood flow of spinal muscles, and started doing X-rays. In 1936, he did over 250 X-rays on patients. Right? He was total workaholic. I don't know what his issues were. But he worked 7 days a week from 7 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock. Wow. So basically, all he did was work. He was actually married. Not when his wife
Happily married.
I don't know how happily married. It was, maybe his wife was happy not to see him. Who knows? All right. But, and then he kept on researching and teaching SOT for 60 years. People just love him. I never met him. He died before I started learning this. Most of the teachers that I've had work with him personally. They just, so SOT became blend of engineering, osteopathic medicine, and chiropractic. All right, so we're going to get a little anatomy lesson. Right? You might have seen me, some of you might have seen me do this. Deb is showing you guys in the audience about the meningeal system and cerebrospinal fluid. How have you ever seen me do it? Okay. So forgive my artwork. All right.
You drew that? No, wait, just wait.
Okay, let's
Do the comparison.
yeah, doesn't do it. So here, that's your brain. That's the spinal cord. That affects something else. Now, covering the brain and spinal cord is a tissue called the meninges. And as you can see in that picture behind me, it's a lot more complicated than how I'm showing it. This is how we're going to show it. Make it simple.
Is it the purple layer down at the bottom?
There's actually 3 layers of the meninges, but we're just, there's actually 3 layers. All right, there's the pia, the dura, and the arachnoid. 1, 2, 3. This is actually 3 layers, and they cover the spinal cord. See that? And the brain. Now, it contains, it contains the cerebrospinal fluid. So the cerebrospinal fluid has a lot of different functions. It protects the brain and spinal cord, so it acts as like a packing device. Right? It brings nutrients. It cleans toxins. That's why that pumping mechanism. That's one of the reasons why it cleans toxins away from the brain and spinal cord, which is really important because we have these after. If you think too much, these toxins end up in your spinal cord. It's just like all the junk. So it cleans out all the junk, and that's linked to Alzheimer's and dementia. And you can get that clean out. It keeps the pressure right. There's a whole system, so that's really important. We're going to talk about that more. And there's a lot of neurological and hormonal chemicals that flow through here. So it's very important in terms of the whole nervous system. So this is really freaking important. Now, covering that is the skull and the spine. And this meningeal tissue attaches down in the sacrum, the bottom of the skull, the occipits, the sacro-occipital technique. It actually connects to the rest of the skull and the first 2 vertebrae, C1 and 2. Now, it doesn't really connect through here. So if we have subluxations in the sacrum or in the skull, they'll pull and torque on that meningeal tissue, affecting the flow of that cerebrospinal. Good. Now, the other thing is, since it's connected here and here and not through here, it ends up like a fishing reel here and a hook down here, and it compresses everything. And a lot of those other subluxations through the rest of the spine are secondary to these. Make sense?
Mhm.
You could adjust all these vertebrae all day, but if you don't release this, those aren't. So that's basically the meningeal system. And here, oh, it's a temperature regulator as well, clearing waste, homeostasis. Homeostasis has to do with the chemicals flowing through there. So this is really interesting. This I just thought to see how this man's mind worked. All right. Does anybody here, have I ever touched your neck and say, does that hurt? And you said yes. And then I put a block down here, right? And then I came back, does that hurt? Oh, it doesn't hurt anymore.
Happened today.
Happened today, all right? So there's a relationship between C1 and L5. They're actually connected through these meningeal tissues. Right? So how these guys figured it out, how Dijonet figured this out, all right? It took 2 years. They examined 200 people. Out of 200 people, they picked 16. They created subluxations in the lumbar spine, L5. They like knocked them out of alignment, right? And then all those people developed subluxations at C1. And they pulled L5 out of them. Aha. And it ended up that what we found, so C1, so occiput is attached to sacrum, C1 attaches to L5, L4 to C2, and all the way in as you go up. You have this relationship. So you could affect this vertebrae by adjusting this vertebrae.
Wow,
Is that something?
that's cool.
All right. So we're going to go over kind of, what SOT is all about. All right. So CMRT stands for chiropractic manipulative reflex technique. So you know how we do the adrenals. So that has to do with the relationship between the spine and the organs and the back of the head.
Oh,
Okay. And what they found, and it's amazing how they found these areas and these spots, and tremendous amount of research and these things over and over again, finding these relationships. And what I found with this, let's say I have people come in with like a chronic pain, let's say in the upper back, right? And I'll check and it's T4. Oh, T4. I know that's related to the gallbladder. So because the gallbladder is stressed, there's a feedback loop that'll go to a certain spot on the occiput. Now we rub those spots in the back here then, and a spot on the spine, and the organ. And then we turn you over, and then there's these reflex points that have to do with the organ. So when we get the organ to relax, then we find that the spinal segments relax. Vice versa. Makes sense? So many times people come in, oh man, my back really hurts. Oh, it's like spasm all the time. Figure out, oh, middle of your back, that's T8, T9, T9. Oh, that's your adrenals. We work on the adrenals, we might give you an adrenal supplement, and all of a sudden the whole spine opens up. But probably most importantly, you're not stressed out. All right? The same thing, I've had people come with like gallbladder pain. Somebody today with chronic gallbladder issues. And do that whole thing and gallbladder has a chance to heal. It's fantastic. So actually, working on the organs and hopefully helping people from having surgeries, symptoms. Same thing with things like constipation and diarrhea. It's amazing how these things work and get everything flowing and moving. Really helping people to help.
Now, you're saying with the gallbladder and they have a pain in their upper back, is that referred pain? Like, is something going on with the gallbladder and it's referring to that part of the back?
Yeah, and then these spots, when you, right, yeah, it's like a referred pain. But then, and I actually had to take my exam on this, took it last year at this point. And it was like a tremendous amount of symptoms that you might have for gallbladder. And I memorized them all and I forgot. So, memorized them for the test. And then I'll explain all about the testing procedures and everything. But, somebody might come in and have a chronic, shoulder pain. And they have it in a very specific spot. Oh, that's coming from the single valve. So I've had people come in with horrible shoulder pain for years, and then I figured out it was involved with the intestines, release the intestines, and all of a sudden shoulder pain. Or it could be like a headache, right? And this top of your head here means that that's liver, or a million different things like that. This is really interesting stuff, and very helpful. So that's CMRT. So we have what we call the categories. Right? So when you come in, we figure out what's the main stress on your spine and nervous system. Right? We have 3 different categories. So category 1. Right? So category 1 has to do with that torquing that we were talking about in the sacrum and the cranium. That's what we're addressing there. And that'll be the main thing for people.
Is that why you say she's a 1?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. And that could shift. And everybody actually has some parts of everything, but there's a main thing that we're going to work on at certain times. So category 1 has to do with the sacrum being off, the skull being off. And that's why we put the blocks a certain way to untorque the sacrum. That starts allowing us through the spinal fluid stuff.
I never knew why you put the blocks in there.
There you go. That's why this workshop's so awesome.
Excuse me. What's a block?
Oh, those are those wedges.
Okay.
The wedges that we put on.
Okay.
They're actually called SOT blocks. But Marissa calls them wedges. She says, I'm going to give you a wedgie. It's actually the SOT blocks. So just by putting those blocks there, it's actually what could affect the whole spinal cord all the way up to your skull and brain, at least the cranial subluxations. Right? That's why those blocks are so important. I leave you there for a while and let them cook. Just releasing that meningeal tension. So then I'll turn you over and then we'll make sure that C1 and C2 is all right. Then we'll go to the skull and then I'll make sure, okay, everything's still over the skull and I'll make some adjustments there. And then we'll make sure everything's working the way it should and everything's going.
Hey, Dave, it's Stephanie. Just a question. So you can tell how much the spine is torqued just by feeling it?
Yeah,
Okay.
usually,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, usually I could have a sense of that. Well, I could feel what's going on in the sacrum and the cranium.
Yeah.
So that's how I'd be able to tell.
So to go from like a category 1 to category 2, it's the spine is untorquing. Is that what's happening? It's not as
So good question. That's what we're going to next.
okay.
Actually, but I had it. Oh, so I was explaining the dura again. And maybe this isn't so important, but you could see how important this is the meningeal tissue, they actually have all these pockets and they bring the cerebral spinal fluid to different parts of the brain, and it's a whole freaking thing. But they support the blood tissue, the blood vessels that supply the brain, the dural sinuses that drain the access cerebral spinal fluid and affect the flow of the cerebral spinal fluid. So it's also linked into the blood to the brain as well. All right. So all that tension in there, these meningeal tissues, the dura is one of those tissues. It's the most inside one. Are affecting how your brain is functioning. So, you know, you came in for back pain, didn't realize like how deep we're really going. Everything we're doing. And all the work that's going to learn how to do this. All right. So this is the category 1 again. Okay. So we're looking at a lot of stuff, the permeability, the blood-brain barrier, how it affects the plasma proteins, the electrolytes, the H2O, the water, the CO2, the O2, all the things that are flowing through the brain, all these are affected by the pressure that the meningeal tissue and the cerebral spinal fluid, all this whole system is keeping like a balance in there all the time. And when there's a problem, it can affect your central nervous system and affect the autonomic nervous system, leading to problems in all of this stuff. So all of these things are linked together.
What's the CNS?
Central nervous system. So this category 1 affecting the meningeal tissues is affecting the way our whole body functions. All right. So now we're going to talk about the other categories. Most people actually come here with a category 2 and a category 3. We can explain those in a minute. And then we are able to, once those are resolved, then we go to category 1, we start working with the deep tissue. Okay. So category, we'll get to that in a second. So with the cranial bones, all right, there are actually 22 movable cranial bones, and the meninges, the dura attaches to the inside of the sutures where the skull bones meet each other, all right? And when those bones are out of alignment, it will cause that tension, affect the flow of the cerebral spine. All right. So now we're going to talk about category 2. Category 2, what most people come in with, right, is an instability in the ligaments that hold the sacrum and pelvis together. And if you've had that, I've explained this to you. When that happens, this instability, the body compensates with tension going all the way down to the feet to compensate for this, and all the way up into the head. In most cases, TMJ actually are coming from this instability. And also the headaches and chronic neck pain all come from this instability in the category. Is that clear? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So usually when people, I'd say about 80% of the people when they first come, they have that category 2, the problem. And once we get this to heal with the blocks, that's when you're laying on the blocks on your back. That'll initiate the healing of these ligaments. Then we're able to go to category 1. Am I clear? Am I being pretty clear? Yeah.
What causes the instability? Like a wound
There
or
could
a
be
sprain?
falls,
Oh,
sitting. You know, it seems like just about everybody comes here with it. I don't know if it's because people are sitting too much or people have falls. I don't know. But I can tell you that almost everybody, Brendan, when we did the exam, most people, when they first come, are category 2. And you can actually see it. Like, actually, I'll know someone's a category 2 as soon as they put it in front of me. because I could see all this kind of torquing, and you know, the shoulder pulls in, this sacrum's going that way. I could tell right. Oh, the other day I had a really cool thing. One of the patients came in, couldn't open her mouth. Right? Maybe open it up like an inch. And I put the blocks on, the category 2 blocks on, and and I'm not open right up. Literally. It was that, like that.
Did her husband pay you to take the blocks out?
All right, this just talks about the category 2 and TMJ. This is really interesting. The muscles pull asymmetrically on the shoulder girdle, right? So the shoulder, then you have all these muscles here that attach into here, and you pull on it from the whole jaw. And this is that the muscles are constantly working to maintain visual and vestibular balance. Vestibular has to do with balance. Chronic neck pain, headaches, and TMJ can all result from it. So category 3, so once you've been in category 2 for too long, all right, and it hasn't been fixed, all that tension from here moves up into here. Right? SI joints can't bear the body's weight. It's supposed to, all our weight should be going down into here. This should be carrying us, but if this is loose, we can't do that anymore. So it'll compensate down here in the lower lumbar, L5, L4, L3, and that'll cause the discs to start breaking down. Cause the arthritis, putting pressure on the nerves. So this will lead to a herniated disc. So what often, almost always, when people come with sciatica, that means that they became a category 3. Okay. And of course, that category 2 being there for too long. So, you know, a little bit. So with my training, we actually go to training twice a year. And, before they have something called homecoming, I'll go for 5 days. Classes 8 to 9 hours a day. It's just, you know, amazing. You get these old, like now I'm an old guy. We get these other old guys who've been doing this since they've been for 30 years, 40 years, some of them 50 or 60 years. We have some teachers who are like 80 years old and they're still teaching. How they understand the body works, and they just give us all this information. It's really exciting. It's really exciting. And then they have one again in the spring, which is shorter. It's only 2 days. And there's this intensive testing that you go through. You certify, and actually, you know, it's intense. Yes. I took a written test with 100 questions, 200 questions actually. Then I'm in the room with examiners. So there's like 2 people that take turns being on the table, and another person asks me questions. He asks me to do things. I say, well, you know, this, what would you do? You know, showing them how I do the cranial work, and I'm doing it on the examiner. No, you're not doing that quite right. And they'll actually go over it with you, go, okay, you know, that's better. You know, doing all this stuff. So, you know, that's my, it's called the advanced proficiency. Last year. The next level is when you become a certified craniopath. And what I understand, that very high percentage of people don't pass that the first time they take it. It's really cool study for all this stuff. then you really learn it. Learn the way that you do more than just that's it. You know, unfortunately, that we don't learn in cranial work or anything. Still stuff. Oh wow, 7:00. I hope this was interesting for everybody. Actually, when I was going through the slides, I saw I could organize it a little bit. And I will the next time I do it. But yes.
So you get people from a 3 to a 1.
Oh yeah.
That would be me.
Yeah, and that's been you too.
So that means that basically, well,
Yes,
I'm impressed.
a lot of people started with 3. And we get the pressure off of the discs and the nerves. Then they go to 2. So now we have to get the sacroiliac joints to stabilize. And then we go to 1. You know, and I haven't had a lot of people stop being 1s. It seems that the 1s just. What the goal is for people not to be 1s either.
How do you keep the fixing to stay?
What's that?
How do you keep all this fixing? How does it stay?
Well,
I mean-
the body has an incredible ability to heal itself. You know, so I mean, that's the thing with chiropractic is that we're not, it's not like a car, but we're just fixing the parts. There's an inborn vitality there, ability to heal. So we're just helping it to heal itself.
Huh.
So it's a thing like what happens when you cut yourself, right? You have a cut and you wake up in the morning, somehow the cut's gone. Right? So how did that happen? Right?
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing. You don't need to stitch it all the time for it to stay. Sometimes you do.
Good to know.
And even when you stitch it, the body's still healing it. You just need to have a little extra help, right? Does that answer that, Tom?
Yes. Otherwise, it seems to me you keep constantly going for 20 years. So at some point, things have to stick together.
Well, right. But
Then you go back in for a tune-up.
Right. You just go for a tune-up. There's so much stress in our lives. Sometimes I wonder if our body was really designed for modern day life. So, we have constant chemical stress, just in the world, in the air we breathe, and the food that we eat, and mental, emotional stress we're all under, especially in modern day, it's just constant. And then the mental, emotional stress on top of that. So all those stressors, they don't go away. And I think our body learns to handle them better and better, the better, less subluxated we are. But, honestly, it's very rare that someone comes in and their C1 is subluxated. It's just stress. But it does happen.
Oh, okay.
We are, and then as we age, the joints have had more wear and tear over the
I want to hear it.
years.
I have TMJ. If I did acupuncture, would that release other things throughout my body?
That I can't tell you. But we never talked about it.
Write it down in my notes.
All right. Let's not forget about it.
Okay.
So anyway, it's a couple minutes after 7. I don't want to keep people any longer. I'm supposed to stop at 7 exactly. If anybody has any questions, ask me in the office. And if I don't have time to answer them, I'll be more than happy to talk to you on the phone. So.
Okay.
But when I do that, a lot of times you'll say, hey, I got to talk to you about something. I'll say, all right, right now it's crazy, I can't really sit and talk, but I'm more than happy to call. So, anyway, love you guys, and I hope that you learned something from this, and you have a better understanding of what we do here, how it's different than allopathic medicine, and frankly, how it's different than a lot of chiropractic.
Thank you, that was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ready?
Huh?
Ready?